I'm sick and tired of people not making chocolate mousse. They used to make it all the time back in the 60s and 70s, classic bistro recipe. But David Lebovitz, who's a food blogger in Paris, been there a long time, he came up with this recipe that he shared with me years ago, a salted caramel chocolate mousse. So my opinion is that this is the best makeover of chocolate mousse. He's taken salted caramel and he's taken chocolate mousse and he's put those two things together. It's time for a return of chocolate mousse. So first step is to melt the sugar. A lot of recipes will say 2 parts sugar, 1 part water. This is an easier method. David, when I talked to him, he said that when he makes a caramel sauce, he doesn't use any water with the sugar. He just spread the sugar out in a skillet or a saucepan. And that way you can see the color change better. It also is faster. So there's really no need to use water. I'll only use sugar from now on when making caramel. I better use more heat because otherwise I'll be here forever. Come on, Jesus Christ, can we just get this thing moving? Now the trick in all of this is to get the sugar to the right temperature. The key is not to talk to the camera when you do this because you'll mess it up. The key is to pay attention. You really want to get a darker color because caramel has a slight bitterness to it, which makes it so delicious. Otherwise, it's going to be just full-on sweet. And I think that's good. Okay, we're going to take this off heat, add some butter to that. So now the cream goes in. This is the exciting part. And that's going to harden up the sugar. But we're going to whisk it. And if you need to put it back on the heat, you can, sort of a low-medium heat to melt that sugar, which, because the cream is cold, seizes up. There's just a little bit on the bottom of the pan. I'm just trying to get that. Chocolate goes in.
Is it important to use good quality chocolate?
No, always use the worst chocolate you can possibly imagine. Yes, of course. You shouldn't get 80% or 90% cacao chocolate, which means the sugar content's very low. It's nasty stuff. I don't know why anyone buys it. 65, 70% is good. Guitar, that kind of thing. But you really do not want a super high cocoa solid chocolate. Looks perfect. Okay. So put that in the bowl. I used to love milk chocolate, then I hated milk chocolate for 40 years. Now I kind of like milk chocolate because it's not overpoweringly chocolatey. You can enjoy the chocolate a little bit because obviously there's milk solids in it. So I'm a kind of a fan of milk chocolate to eat out of hand. But obviously if you're doing a chocolate mousse, you're going to use not a milk chocolate. Okay, this has to cool down a little bit before we whisk in the eggs for obvious reasons. And then we'll get on to the egg whites. David Lebowitz's recipe, which we love, didn't have you add any of the sugar to the whites, which I think, pardon me, David, but I think is a mistake. So every time we use egg whites in a dessert, we always say, add some sugar to the whites. That gives you a more stable foam. And when you fold these whites into the chocolate base, the caramel chocolate base, they're less likely to get destroyed. That foam is going to be sturdier and creamier now. Now, normally, I would stop here. I wouldn't have the tip of the white stand up if it's going to be folded into a cake batter and put in the oven. This isn't going in the oven, so we're going to need a slightly stiffer texture because that's going to provide the texture for the mousse. At this point, you really don't want to overbeat them. It's kind of good to finish by hand. With that stand mixer, if you did it 3 seconds too long, you could end up overbeating them. So, yeah, first thing we're going to do is add the egg yolks here. I'm going to whisk them in. This is the typical problem. With chocolate, you have a really thick batter. So the question is, how do you take delicate egg whites and fold them into a super thick batter? Well, as you know, the first thing you're going to do is to take about 1/3 of the whites and mix them in. And you don't have to worry about being delicate at this point. you're really trying to lighten up the mixture. It's going to be easier to fold in the rest of it. We'll be a little gentler with this. And again, if you didn't add sugar to your whites, you're going to find this step a little more difficult.
Has cooking made you a gentler, more sensitive person?
No, I'm still angry and unpleasant. I think if you bake a lot, I think you do actually have to be a little more patient. Don't forget, especially with chocolate desserts, always add salt, especially salt with caramel chocolate. This is the important part.
So now we're gonna
Make a huge mess. No, the people I don't like get less. Growing up, my mother had if I was serving ice cream for dessert, for example, I'd always make sure my sister got less than I did. I always got the bowl with the most ice cream. Yeah, I'm filling up my glass right now. This is really awkward.
Just get like 1 spoon in cleanly into the glass and move on.
Jesus Christ. Well, you gave me this spoon to do this. Jesus Christ. Okay. Into the fridge for at least 8 hours, up to 24 hours. So you don't have to do this because I'm a crazy for salt. Wow. That caramelization of the sugar gives it that. It makes it much more interesting. Otherwise, it's just sugar and chocolate and cream and butter. This is super good.